And 1. Hello everybody, welcome to the show. My name is Alistair, 8 feet to my left, and if all goes well...
Hi everybody, I'm
Picture, y'all!
I forgot to unmute my microphone. There we go. Hi everybody, so we're trying out picture-in-picture tonight. I got the second camera working again. Hooray! Of course. Yes, I'm very tiny. Look, it's a little tiny.
It's like a pocket muggery.
I'm very fancy. You want to see how fancy it is? I have a fan because it's an oven in this office right now because we had to close the windows. So
Oh my.
Oh my.
Oh, Red Butler, I do declare.
Oh, are we getting echo? Oh no. Hold on. Is that any better? But now they're not going to be able to hear you. Hang on, let's try that. Talk.
All right.
Yes, that's you.
Oh yeah, that's my job. Okay. Welcome to the show, everybody. For those of you who are experienced hands, you know what's coming. Which is a salute to the fan art, which we opened with an opening monologue, a big old chunk of 9 goblins, and then some shenanigans. For those of you who are brand new, you don't know what's coming. So, we open with a piece of fan art, which this week is the lovely Gay and in Love Evil Men by Captain's Art Blog. And then we do an opening monologue, which is almost always by our house band, the magnificent Mr. Frog Croakley, who is a wonderful gamers journalist and an even better genre fiction author. I firmly believe there are a small group of people in every generation, in every creative industry, who will change it for the better when they leave it. And Nate is one of those people. His brain works like no one else's. And it is always an absolute pleasure to see what has fallen out of it this week. And then we will go into 3 chapters of 9 Goblins by T. Kingfisher, who is, in fact, Ursula Vernon. And then we'll do some...
I apologize in advance if there's a little bit of an echo. I wasn't able to troubleshoot any issues, so do let us know if I'm coming across echoey. And if so, I might just have to not talk.
That's not going to happen, we both know it.
Look, I can be the little tiny Marguerite trapped in the box. Anyway, okay, there we go.
I love you purely and completely.
Well, only for you would I make time.
Only for you would you,
Ah, shoot, looks like the echo's back.
God damn it.
Well, maybe the break. We'll take a troubleshoot at that, folks. We'll just let him self-talk for now.
Okie dokie. Right. So without further ado, let us step across to our opening monologue, which this week speaks very much to something I am rather fond of. This is by Nick Crowley. It appeared in Rock, Paper, Shotgun recently, and it is: a Planet Zoo player has bred an ostrich taller than the Statue of Liberty. There was a brief and special period just after the launch of delightful menagerie management game Planet Zoo, during which the game's simulated global economy went deeply and deliciously wrong. Oh, the content warnings are virtual animal cruelty, animal death, and battery farming. Comedy!
Is it virtual animal death?
Yes.
Virtual animals and death.
Yeah. The theory was beautiful. In order to buy into breeding programs for high-profile endangered species, players first had to prove their credentials with the husbandry of more mundane beasts. By trading healthy, happy animals with other players' zoos, it was supposed folks could work their way gradually towards the purchase of prestigious creatures like pandas, gorillas, and elephants. Inevitably, however, players gamed the living crikey out of the market, and, as I documented at the time, the wheels fell off with a resounding clang. Early birds hoarded orangutans and the like in vast sheds from the word go, driving most animals into stratospheric price positions, and trapping the vast majority of the player base in a reeking purgatory of ostriches, warthogs, and peafowl. And that, my friends, is your agenda for the week. The only way out of this monotony was through quite literal brute force, by creating zoos that were little more than sprawling factories, churning out hundreds of inbred, genetically bungled animals in the desperate hope of one day being able to afford a mediocre crocodile. Luckily, Planet Zoo was rapidly patched out of its dystopian state and given an economic model better suited to its original pro-conservation ethos. The pig-shit-heavy ambience of the warthog reactor matrices faded from save files, and across thousands of PCs, the squawking of the bird mills was silenced at last. I had thought it was all over, but in the words of the poster for Jurassic Park: The Lost World, something has survived. I've been having a fantastic time with Planet Zoo of late. The recent Southeast Asia Animal Pack prompted me to get back into the game, and I spent my recent holiday meticulously constructing hippo zones and reptile pits, with the exact melancholy fervour of Ben from Parks and Rec when he gets really depressed and takes up stop-motion animation. I'm watching Parks and Rec at the moment. That joke is just for me, as far as I'm concerned.
Growing a bit hurts out there, boss. Love it.
In one of my recent zoos, I decided to make a big multi-species savanna exhibit, which naturally included ostriches. And while managing my flock of rope-necked ruffians to breeding groups,
Sorry, was that rope-necked?
Rope-necked ruffians, I started looking through their stats in the game's Zoopedia in order to see how my ostriches compared with industry standards. And that's when I saw it. The largest... Pardon me.
You need a moment.
And that's when I saw it. The largest size recorded for a Planet Zoo ostrich is 109.35 meters tall. After a brief chuckle, I refreshed the page to unglitch it, but the stat was still there. All the other records on the page seemed completely reasonable. Indeed, the record size for a male ostrich was a perfectly conceivable 2.57 meters, and yet there it was. At some point in a zoo called Ariadne May, there lived a female ostrich called Hasanati, who was taller than the Statue of Liberty. Had Hasanati, I wondered, been the last in a line of titans bred during the feverish gold rush days of the early grind? Had she been a one-off? Or had her eldritch bigness gene been a curse passed through generations, making the mothers of her line progressively larger until they reached their towering stature? Surely Hasanati's comparatively thin legs could not have supported her colossal weight. She must have spent a short life lying in the dust like a wheezing, feathered hill, having dump trucks full of grain tipped down her gullet, and then, at some point, with a sound like an anvil being dropped on a 5-foot thick rubber sheet, her heart must have finally caved in beneath the weight of God's contempt, and she must have died. Her like will never be seen again in this age of the world. After this revelation, I began to check the other Zoopedia pages, looking to see if other species had been bred into megaton abominations. Curiously, however, everything on all the other pages seemed entirely within the bounds of natural law, with two notable exceptions. First, I present to you Maharini, the largest ever Komodo dragon in Planet Zoo, at precisely 0.00 meters in length. As was the case with our unfortunate ostrich, whatever ghastly blood ran in Maharini's veins only afflicted the female side of her lineage, since the records for male Komodo dragons all appear quite ordinary. But unlike Hasanati, Maharini managed to reproduce. I know this because apparently in a zoo known only as Brackets, another such cursed lizard still draws breath. This issue, it seems, is very much still in play. If anything, the idea of a Komodo dragon of null size troubles me more than a kaiju-sized ostrich. Is it genuinely of zero length, or just so small that the game cannot register its presence? Has it adapted to be able to exist at a plank-length scale, hunting quantum demons in the spaces between the strands of reality? Or is it a normal-sized beast, but made entirely of photons, so as to achieve zero mass? If so, is it capable of accelerating to light speed? None of these possibilities are, I would argue, comforting, but they are all of them pure, light-hearted fun in comparison to the case of Hegipa 8375_5067. Hegipa 8375_5067 was a cheetah. She lived in a zoo called Happy Animals. And she was minus 2,147,483,000 kilometers long.
I'm sorry, did you say negative?
Minus 2,147,483,000 kilometers long. To put that into context, that's a distance that would comfortably span the entire diameter of Jupiter's orbit, and it describes the space where a cheetah is not. Right now, everything in Planet Zoo's universe, every zoo run by every player, exists in the negative space of Hagiba 8375_5067's digital shadow. Can we truly perceive her? More to the point, can she perceive us? And what will happen, dear reader, if she decides she no longer wishes to be contained?
That there's a mood.
I bloody love that. Brilliantly, if you pop along to the actual link to Rock Paper Shotgun, someone has gifted Nate with a fantastic piece of artwork of the Statue of Liberty with a vast ostrich behind it, eye glowing in the New York fog. It's really cool.
We'll make sure to include that in the show notes.
And speaking of really cool, look at the funky boy. Look at the fungus on Chungus. Check this out. This is such excellent, excellent work. Thank you so much to Cryptid Cabaret. The concept was by Cassiopeia. And I love that his mushrooms still stand up.
Well, I'm going to come on over. Now you're just playing with it because apparently my microphone's not working. I think they're supposed to stand up, but I think the weathers of the dangers of travel have...
Fungus on Chungus among us.
Would you stop massaging it, please? Yeah. Okay. Okay.
She's sitting back there now.
Okay, bye-bye.
Okay, bye-bye. So, what's new with us, honey?
Well, I don't know if I can talk and if there's going to be echo effects, so I'm not sure what's going on here. Let me come over here.
Okay.
Are you going to fan yourself because you're warm?
Yes.
Okay. Can you fan me too? I look like Princess Leia with like cyber donuts. You shouldn't sing that on stream.
Because it's for legal reasons.
Yes, he did in fact bonk his head and cut himself shaving, unfortunately. What's new with us? Oh gosh, I don't know. What is new with us this week? It's warm.
It's warm.
It's lovely warm. I think it's lovely.
We've started taking morning walks as a means of getting some exercise in, which are trying to kill me, and they will not succeed.
They're not trying to kill you. They're just happening.
But it's going really well, and also because we're very sensible, we're bribing ourselves because we go for a morning walk to a place where there's coffee.
Yes.
And then we come home.
Coffee is in fact lovely.
Yes.
That's been most of what's new this week. I'm on vacation. He's on deadline.
It's going. You know that book I can't tell you about? There's 7,000 words of it now.
Good.
Yeah.
7,000 more words of it is good. I cannot for the life of me figure out what's going on with the headset, and it's pissing me off. Oh well. That's all I can think of that's going new this week.
Pretty much.
We'll tell people about what we're going to play on Sunday at the end of this week, I think. You could talk about the emojis.
Oh yeah, we have some lovely new emojis.
Okay, you could talk a little more about the emojis.
Including my favorite one, Significant T.
Exactly.
Seriously, this is really, really nice work. I love them all. I love accents as well. And the Love Struck Chungus.
He's not love struck, he's wrapped.
He's wrapped.
He's very wrapped. People are quite warm, which some people are enjoying it, others people are not.
I'm a Manx Wookiee. I'm not built for this.
I know you're not, honey. It's okay.
You know, I can do rain. I just can't do this well. But I'm doing it. That was gripping, wasn't it? Anyway. But yeah, the book's going fine. I'm on deadline with 3 or 4 things at the moment. Everything's a little bit high end, but I am refusing to bow. And I will get it all done on time. And then people will leave me alone for a couple of days. Also, I got royalties for a book that I wrote.
With words from your brain.
Now, these royalties in
Don't be pejorative.
In the kind of terms you would expect from an author, these royalties are, hooray, I can buy a Twix. But in my terms, this is actually quite a lot of money. So we did the thing which we normally do, which is 90% of it gets put away and 10% of it gets used on fun. And in this instance, being used on fun means that a transformer who's an F-14's fighter jet that then turns into a robot will shortly be arriving in the home.
Okay, but you haven't told the whole story, have you?
Of?
I thought this was the Top Gun one.
Yes, this is Hasbro recently.
He bought himself oh gosh, my hair is very summer hair bun. Ignore it, I'm warm. He bought himself a Top Gun transformer. It comes with a volleyball. I'm surprised there's no chafing dish.
And a little motorbike.
What?
Actually comes with a tiny, tiny Tom Cruise on a motorbike.
Oh my gosh.
The same range.
Utterly ridiculous to me.
The same range
But
of.
it's yours. Congratulations, honey. I love you.
The same range of Transformers also includes the Ecto-1.
Okay.
Gigawatt, who is the Autobot who turns into the time-traveling DeLorean from Back to the Future.
Okay, I should have seen that one coming.
And this just horrifying explosion of purple and pink plastic that I think is meant to be the X-Men's Blackbird jet from the 90s cartoon.
Wow.
Yes.
Okay.
Oh, Pezzy bought Gigawatt on Monday because, see?
Nice. Very nice.
The one I'm inevitably waiting for is sooner, even if it takes another couple of years to get to, Fast 12, this time family requires going back in time.
Fast 12, the Jurassic Park crossover. Okay, talk about it. You should talk about it.
I believe it's Universal. I need to check.
Put that down.
Because
otherwise you're going to, smack my monitor with your enthusiasm.
Universal have two franchises that make money at the moment. The Jurassic Park movies and the Fast and the Furious ones. And there are industry sources, reliable ones, talking about how a crossover is being discussed.
No.
I am the Weaver.
No. It's ridiculous. The very concept is ridiculous.
Furious Park, yes.
Yeah, Furious Park, exactly. Yeah, look at his happy little face.
Too fast, too dinosaur.
Too fast, too many spikes. There's so many jokes here. Jurassic Fast. No. Too fast, too... Yeah, there's too many jokes.
See, I feel your skepticism. I feel it. And it nourishes me. Because fundamentally, if this happens, that means that the chances of in my lifetime, me living to see Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson punch out a Tyrannosaurus Rex have gone from 0 to at least 30%.
Oh.
At least. And I'm telling you, there will absolutely be a Dom's enormous...
Raptors all up in the kitchen, Phil!
For those of you who may not be
okay.
aware of this is possibly my favourite meme. Phil Tippett, I believe, is credited on Jurassic Park as the Raptor Wrangler. And it's a special effects term. He was the guy who looked after the Raptor puppets. And someone on YouTube ages ago responded to this and pulled this credit out with, "Really? What did you do? You had one job, Phil. One job."
Where the one job meme comes from.
There were raptors all up in the kitchen, Phil. All up in the kitchen. And brilliantly, this got back to him. And he responded in kind. I think it was something like, "If you saw what I stopped them doing." I'm going to watch those terrible movies again.
Furious 2, Jurassic Past. That's a good title.
Jurassic Past is fantastic. I had a thing with a weaponized herd of Brontos being driven towards Los Angeles by Charlize Theron, and how Dom and the others have to use turbocharged nitro trucks to kind of smash into the Brontos and steer them away. I'm 44.
You have a rich internal fantasy.
Let's read a story, shall we? Previously on 9 Goblins. Kung kung.
Don't forget the content warnings as well.
Yes, of course, content warnings for horror, themes, violence, and gross food. Nasilka's intrepid band of, well,
Goblos.
I say soldiers. The goblins that follow Nasilka into battle, because, like all smart men, they have figured out that, she knows what she's doing and she might not get them killed. Fought a wizard.
Because she didn't step back fast enough.
Yes. Fought a wizard. Wizards in this universe are terrifying.
And not all there.
And they break reality. The wizard, when he sees, 18 or so, not small goblins, pounding towards him, panics and yanks himself away and takes the goblins with him. So they land about 50, 60 miles away from the war. They opt not to kill the wizard because they're, nice. And then they
They don't commit a murder.
They don't do murder.
That's correct.
Yes.
They're soldiers, not murderers.
And then they decide to try and work out how the hell they're going to get home. Meanwhile, Henry Cavill, because let's face it, kids, Sings to Trees is Henry Cavill. Has tended to a, frankly, and I don't use this word lightly, fucking terrifying bone stag. And is aware that there's something off in the woods. Perhaps 9 off things. Chapter 10. The next day was easier. The Wine and Niners had finally gotten their heads around the fact that they were here, in the woods, and not on the battlefield. Goblins are nothing if not adaptable. Fewer bushes were engaged in combat, everyone had learned to recognize poison oak, and Thumper had remembered how to spot a few kinds of edible berry. Most of them weren't ripe yet, so breakfast was a painfully sour affair. But hey, it beat starvation. They walked. They stopped occasionally to drink at streams and soak their hot, sore feet, but never for terribly long. Nasilka kept a grueling pace to start. It wasn't just a desire to keep the wizard behind her, although honestly, that was part of it. Mostly it was the tracks she'd found in the mud that morning. They looked a bit like hoof prints. Actually, they looked a lot like hoof prints, except that most hoofed animals did not have claws. She'd always thought the two were mutually exclusive, in fact, but unless they'd been stalked by a deer wearing fighting spurs, she didn't have a better explanation. She'd stamped them out, no sense causing a panic, but she didn't want to be anywhere near the owner of the tracks when they stopped tonight. Murray seemed pensive. He kept turning his head and staring into the woods, a line forming between his eyebrows and muttering something to himself. Nasilka watched him do this for the better part of an hour, until the quiet muttering started to get on her nerves. "All right, Murray, you're a genius. What do you think?" Murray grimaced. "Sorry, Sarge. Didn't ask you to be sorry. I want to know what you think." "Don't like it, Sarge." He made a grasping gesture with one hand, as if trying to pluck an answer out of the air. There's something about these woods. I can't quite place it. I'm not seeing the right thing. I'm a marsh goblin. I don't quite know what I'm looking for, but there's something that's off. Thumper's a forest goblin. Ask him. Murray started to shrug dismissively and then stopped. "Oh, maybe you're right. Hey, Thumper!" Thumper dropped back to walk next to them. "Tell me what's wrong with these woods." Thumper's brow furrowed deep enough to plant corn. "Wrong? There's nothing wrong. Perfectly good woods." He reached out and patted the bark of a passing tree. "Look at the size of this fellow. Probably half rotted out. Ants' nests, wasps too, I bet. Come down in the next big storm and kill us all. Wonderful old tree." Murray shook his head, making the grasping gesture again. No, come on. Oh, crud. Thumper, what kind of trees are these?" I don't know. Oak, mostly. Good oaks, not those wretched little pin ones. Some big pines, but not many. Saw some cedar a while back. Wrong question, muttered Murray, plucking at the air again. What's the right question? Asked Nasilka. Murray made a quick silencing motion that was a little rude to use on a superior officer, but Nasilka wasn't going to interfere with genius at work. I'm not seeing something because it isn't there. Thumper, how old is that tree? Thumper shrugged. Couple of 100 years. I'd have to cut it down and count rings decipher. Murray's hand shot out and grabbed the air as if he caught a rope. Cut it down! That's it! They aren't cutting it down! Thumper, how long since this area was logged? Logged? Thumper shook his head. This is peak forest. This is, you know, the old stuff. This hasn't been logged in the last 1,000 years. Yes, that's it. That's what's wrong. You'd rather somebody cut it all down? Asked Thumper stiffly. Fine. I mean, it's what I would expect from a marsh goblin. No. That's not. That's just it. Murray was practically dancing. Sarge, they haven't cut any trees. There is a human town right over there, practically, and they haven't cut any trees. That's a little weird, admitted Nasilka. Even we cut trees. Exactly. They need wood for houses and fences and wagons and firewood and stuff. But Sarge, they haven't touched this forest at all. Why not? Maybe they think it's haunted? Asked Nasilka, thinking of the clawed hoofprints and the whooshing. Murray shook his head. I doubt it. No one is the only source of wood for miles. No, there's only one reason people don't cut down a forest. Somebody already owns it. And who lives in forests? Nasilka felt a cold prickling crawl down her spine. You mean, Murray nodded, elves. They kept walking. There is only so long that you can clutch your weapons and wait for the white-faced figures to leap from behind the trees. For the Wine and Niners, this was about 45 minutes. Maybe there were elves. If there were, they'd probably find out soon enough. In the meantime, Poison Oak was a more immediate concern, and harder to spot. Nasilka called a halt in the late afternoon. All right, everybody take 5. She looked around the Wine and Niners and sighed. Most of them were doing okay, but the 2 recruits and Blanchette were about done in. The recruits were just not used to sustained marching, but poor Blanchette was grey-faced and sweating from having to cover the irregular terrain on his crutch. Blanchette, sit down before you fall down. Yeah, that goes for the bear too. Mishkin, Mushkin, sit. Murray, you still want to try raiding the farmhouse? Murray nodded. All right, Murray, you're in charge. Algol, Goober, go with Murray. Don't take any unnecessary risks. I would rather nobody saw you at all. Stealth is more important than clean clothes. Remember that. She racked her brain for anything else useful to say. Goober, get your finger out of there. They waited. And good luck. The 3 saluted and moved off towards the fields. Weasel, you and Thumper go see if you can't find something to eat. And keep your eyes peeled for anything that might make a good campsite. The rest of us will wait here. The pair saluted. Nasilka watched them go, the tiny little weasel and the slab of angry muscle that was Thumper. All right, troops, she said, turning back to Blanchette and the twins. You 3 rest up. That's an order. Blanchette, will the bear mind if I borrow your helmet? There was a brief consultation. He says it's okay, Sarge. Good, I could really use some tea. Making tea in a used orc helmet recently converted to teddy bear sedan chair was an experience, but good sergeants learned to improvise. The hard part? Getting the helmet clean. Who knew that Blanchette was using so much hair gel under the thing? She had just gotten the water boiling when she heard a rustling in the bushes. It was Murray. He and Algol and Goober emerged from the woods looking thoughtful. Well, Murray and Algol looked thoughtful. Goober had his finger up his nose again. I was quick, she said. Murray tugged at his ponytail. Sarge, I think you better come look at this. What is it? There's nobody there. She raised her eyebrows. That's good, right? They stepped out. We can grab the laundry. Nobody was the wiser. No, Sarge, I don't think they stepped out. I think... He fell silent. Algol put a hand on her arm. Sarge, he rumbled. You really better come look at this. All right, Gluber, stay here. Everybody lay low. Keep quiet. Don't start any large fires. She cast around for the next most responsible person on the chain of command and sighed. Oh, God. Oh, well. No help for it. Blanchett, the bear's in charge. He made the bear salute. He says he's honoured by your trust, Sarge. And Nasilka nodded. Can't be any worse than some of the generals. All right. Let's go. Hashtag Team Bear. Chapter 11. Sings to Trees had finally finished every small chore to be done around the farm, and by mid-afternoon too. This was so unusual that he sat down into the rocking chair on the porch with his eyes closed, because he was fairly sure that the moment he opened them, he would see something he'd forgotten, and, well, then he'd have to get up again. Fleabane ambled over and flopped down at his feet. Sings to Trees dangled a hand over the arm of the chair, and the coyote dragged a long tongue over his fingers. The elf was content to slouch in the chair for a few minutes, feeling the afternoon sun baking his face and forearms. Sometimes, even though he was fairly young, as elves go, the whole thing got away from him. Too many animals, too many injuries, too many things that needed to get done right this minute. He, occasionally, even wished for an assistant. Unfortunately, humans weren't all that interested in sending their young to live with an elf, and the other elves, he knew well enough what they thought. He was some kind of martyr, as far as they were concerned. They were glad he existed, but nobody wanted to get too close for fear of getting unicorn crap, or something worse on them. Sometimes he thought about giving it all up, moving into the glade and taking up something respectable, like glass whispering. In a few 100 years, when he was ancient and his knees creaked like old floorboards, did he really want to be tottering around the farm, midwifing unicorns and bandaging trolls? He opened his eyes with a sigh. And there was a troll looking at him. Sings to Trees didn't quite yelp, but he did make a choked noise. Fleabane's tail thumped companionably on the boards. The coyote liked trolls. They brought goat meat, and Fleabane was desperately fond of goat. The troll was sitting on the path and spilling over on the sides. He recognized it as Frog Snoggler. That wasn't the troll's real name, but it was the closest phonetic equivalent to the complex set of sounds that it used to describe itself. At least he thought it was describing itself. He'd never been able to learn their language. Fortunately, they understood his perfectly well. You gave me quite a start, the elf said, getting up. The troll's silent approach didn't surprise him. They moved with eerie silence for their size, but seeing one out and about before sunset was unusual. Grah, said the troll, and smiled. Trolls always smiled. Their mouths were wide and frog-like and naturally suited to it. With its eyes squeezed tight against the sunlight, Frog Snoggler looked almost comically pleased. What are you doing up at this hour, anyway? Sings to Trees asked, coming down from the porch. The troll's face fell. Grah, it said humbly and held out its arms. Oh, no. Cradled against its chest, almost lost against the clay-coloured bulk, lay a battered grey fox. An ugly leg trap, all steel fangs and metal, hung grotesquely from one small back leg. Grah? Asked the troll anxiously, holding out the injured animal. Grah. Sings to Trees got his arms under the fox, who snapped weakly at him. The trap hit his chest with a metallic clunk, and outrage choked him. Bloody poachers, he growled, shifting his grip on the fox. The trap chattered again. Grah, agreed the troll. Its low forehead wrinkled in a frown. Immense tusks glittered briefly at the edges of its mouth. Sings to Trees took a very long, very deep breath, and let the anger go. There were more important matters at hand. The fox was a skinny little thing, panting in pain, probably dehydrated as well, and standing around with his teeth gritted didn't do the poor creature any good. First things first. He wasn't strong enough to get the leg trap off himself, but fortunately brute strength was squatting an arm's length away. Okay, Frogsnoggler, I'm going to need your help. Grog, it nodded vigorously. I'll hold him. I want you to pull the trap open, slowly, and I'll see if we can get the leg out without something worse happening. The fox's leg was badly cut, but not crushed. The little animal had been lucky. Sings to Trees tossed a towel over its head to keep it from ripping his arm open, held the fox's torso firmly under his elbow, and nodded to the troll. Carefully now. Frogsnoggler reached down and opened the steel trap as casually as Sings to Trees might open a book. The elf pulled the fox's foot free, working as delicately as he could to keep the wound from being torn even wider by the cruel metal teeth. The fox panted in pain. It took less than a minute, but several subjective eternities passed for Sings to Trees. Got it. There! He reached out and patted Frogsnoggler's flank with his free hand. Well done! The troll beamed to him. Gra! 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 Ha ha ha! Sings to Trees had no idea what the troll had just said, but he could venture a guess. I think he'll probably be fine, but I need to treat this. Can you help me a little more if the daylight's not bothering you too much? Gra! Gra! The troll waved a hoof-like hand dismissively. I love that bit. That is my favourite bit in the book. The image of Frogsnoggler going, ah! Then, if you could take him, Sings to Trees placed the fox back into the troll's arms and went to get catgut and a needle. Cleaning the wound and sewing the fox's leg up was a tedious process for Sings to Trees, and an undoubtedly painful one for the fox, despite the sedative the elf poured down its throat. He was rather glad the troll was holding the animal. The fox kept snapping, kept trying to thrash, but it might as well have been held down by a mountain. One more, and there we go. He tied off the thread. Okay, I'll keep him for a few days and make sure it heals up clean, and he gets a couple of square meals. He accepted the fox again. Thank you. And, oh no! Gra. Sings to Trees leveled an accusing finger at Frogsnoggler. Why didn't you tell me he was biting you? Gra. The troll shrugged and scuffed the dirt with one hoof like a small child caught at mischief. Its left arm was full of tooth marks, most of which had skidded off the thick hide, but a few were filling up with blood. Stay right there. I'm cleaning those. Gra. The fox went into an empty hutch, most recently home to an infant manticore. Sings to Trees put a bowl of water in with him and draped the towel in the corner. He went back out to the porch. Frogsnoggler had waited. Sings to Trees picked up the bottle of iodine, turned around, and sighed. The troll's eyes riveted on the bottle. Its mouth sagged in a parody of despair. Oh, come on, you're a big troll, said Sings to Trees. This was something of an understatement. Frogsnoggler was probably close to 2 tons and stood nearly 8 feet tall. And I know you're brave. You stood there while that fox bit you, and never a peep. Grrr. The elf put his hands on his hips. Frogsnoggler cowered away, one arm over its eyes. Trembling, the troll held out its injured arm, tears welling in his dinner-plate-sized eyes. Now, this was the standard trollish response to all medical treatment, and Sings to Trees knew full well Frogsnoggler would have done the same thing for removing a splinter or splinting a bone, but he was still torn between wry amusement and, well, feeling a bit like an ogre. In truth, it was probably nothing. Trolls sustained worse every time they went after a billy goat, but still, foxes weren't known for their clean mouths. He brandished the iodine bottle and a clean rag. The troll sniffled through the whole operation. Finally, Sings to Trees set the rag aside. All done! Frogsnoggler inched its hand down from its eyes and gazed at him worriedly. Really? All done, said the elf and patted the troll's shoulder. And you were very brave. I'm very proud of you. A smile cracked the immense face. Frogsnoggler leapt up and cut an elephantine caper around Sings to Trees. Gra! 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 Now, if that gets infected, if it turns red or it starts to smell bad, I want you to come back here, okay? Grah! Then go on home before the sun fries you. The troll nodded, reached out a hand, and patted Singster rather heavily on the shoulder. Oh, the elf patted the troll's knuckles in return, which had wiry black hair growing from them. I'll probably release the fox in 2 or 3 days, if you want to come back and see him. Grah! Frog Snoggler said happily, and turned and scampered, insomuch as something the size of a team of oxen can scamper, into the woods. Singster chuckled to himself. He loved trolls. They were so immensely good-hearted. He didn't know how they managed to be voracious predators. Every time they saw a wounded animal, they brought it to him instead of eating it. This wasn't the first patient that had come to him in the arms of a troll. Once it had been a half-grown moose. The moose had been a fairly straightforward job, barbed wire wrapped around one leg, but treating the adult troll, who had been kicked half senseless, had taken most of the night. He went back in and checked on the fox. It was resting now, still breathing more shallowly than he'd like, but sleeping nonetheless. There were herbs he needed, but his supply was running low. He really needed to go out to the bog meadow and pick some before the season turned completely and everything dried out. And there, of course, went the rest of the afternoon. He laughed a bit to himself as he picked up a basket. He should have known, of course. There was never any free time that wasn't immediately filled with a crisis. But he felt good anyway. Between the sleeping fox and the capering troll, his earlier glum mood had broken up. Maybe he would be doing this when he was old. Someone had to. And if he needed a seeing-eyed troll to help him around the farm, he suspected he only had to ask. Stepping out onto the porch again, he glanced around for the trap. It wouldn't do to step on it, but he hadn't seen where Frog Snoggler had dropped it. He got down the front steps and saw it. The troll, casually and without fanfare, had reduced the trap to fragments of twisted metal. Singster could not have duplicated the destruction without a hammer and possibly a forge. The elf made a faint, thoughtful sound to himself and went off to gather herbs. I love that the general consensus in the chat is that yes, Frog Snoggler is the best.
You're right.
I'm warm, but it's all good. Oh my, oh sir. Chapter 12. The farm.
Hydrate.
Oh, thank you, Kiwi Jelly. The farmhouse was very quiet. It was too quiet. Now, generally, when people say it's too quiet, it's a prelude to a monster with a lot of teeth jumping out of the grass. In this case, however, since the only thing that could qualify as monsters with a lot of teeth were the goblins themselves, it was just plain too quiet. The farmhouse was a small sod building, and that was odd too, since there was a whole forest right there, and who builds out of sod when you have wood? And the fences were the low, dry stone affairs that look cute and quirky and charming, till you realise they're made of all the rocks that some poor farmer had to haul out of a field by hand. There was wood, but not too much. The timbers were in place only when nothing else would do. A few scattered tree stumps across the farm showed where they'd probably come from. It was a neatly kept yard with a thatched roof and a small hen house and a pig pen. Around back, a low stable held 3 empty stalls. It was really quiet. Perhaps they went into town. Horses aren't here. And took the pigs and chickens with them, asked Murray skeptically. A rising, rattling hum startled them all until they realised that one of the trees dotting the property had cicadas in it. The insects buzzed their way up the register and then fell silent. And it was still too quiet. Maybe it was market day. They took the pigs and chickens to sell. Every single one such. You got a better explanation? Algod cleared his throat. It must have looked pretty odd, carrying all those chickens and walking. The wagon's still here. They looked at the wagon. It was distinctly wagon-like. The cicadas buzzed again. Checked the hen house. They made their way around the farmhouse. Coming out of the woods, they had been moving like goblins on a raid. Low to the ground, skulking, hiding behind things. It was beginning to seem silly in this deep abandoned silence, but Nasilka hadn't lived this long by going into enemy territory and then sauntering around in the open. Besides, it was so quiet that it was almost comforting to crouch behind water barrels and old haystacks. Made you feel like you could hide from that terrible silence. The last stretch to the hen house had no cover for anyone over 6 inches tall. Crouched behind the compost bin, the 3 goblins eyed the distance. Nasilka gritted her teeth, squared her shoulders, and said, "Wait here." She didn't run. Goblins know all about monsters. They are related, after all, and they know all about the rules. Like small children, they know the rules in their bones. If there was something out there, something cloaking itself in the silence, if she ran, then that meant it could run too. So she walked to the door of the hen house over earth packed hard and littered with old chicken droppings and bits of straw, while the skin between her shoulders on the back of her neck crept, crawled, cringed. Algol and Murray crouched together, shoulder to shoulder, biting their lips. The sergeant reached out, caught the wired door, and flung it open. Sunlight lanced through cracks in the ceiling and made pale spots on the straw. Old dust, old straw, old feathers. There were reasonably fresh droppings near the door, but no clucking greeted her, and there was no movement of nervous chickens along the walls. She considered looking behind the door. She decided not to tempt fate. She closed the door instead and walked back across the courtyard with a deliberately steady tread. "Empty," she said in a low voice. "Few days, probably." Algol, without saying anything, crab walked over to the pig pen and looked over the fence. The other 2 followed him. "There's still a half bucket of slops here, Sarge," he said quietly. "Well, it's not that weird. Have you ever known pigs to leave any slops behind them?" They stood around the slop bucket like 3 witches around a cauldron. It was indeed half full. The sides of the bucket had crusted and dried, and there was mould growing in the bottom. Algol dipped a finger in, pulled it out, covered in gunk, and popped it in his mouth. Rolled the taste around like a gaunt. "More than 3 days? Less than a week. Needs salt." They stood in silence. Then, I love that. Then as one looked at the farmhouse, Nasilka sighed. "All right, what are you guys thinking?" "Plague, maybe," said Algol. Murray shook his head. "No bodies. Where'd the chickens go?" "Maybe they buried the bodies and took the chickens?" "Don't explain the pig slop. I haven't seen anything that could be a grave marker." "Maybe they left suddenly. Bandits. No blood. They wouldn't have taken the chickens. Still doesn't explain the pig slop." "Maybe bandits killed the pigs before they were done eating. No blood in the pen. The place is in pretty good shape. Bandits would have wrecked the joint." "Could they be hiding?" Algol jerked his chin at the farmhouse. "With the pigs, and the chickens, and the mules, or whatever else ought to be in these empty stalls. It's not that big an house." They all looked at the house in question again. Nasilka nodded. "All right, let's go in. Don't bother sneaking. Let's just get this over with." Now, in a properly run universe, the door would have opened with one of those long creaks that would have gone on forever. But it was hung on leather strap hinges, so it swung open really quietly. The interior was dark and quiet. 2 chairs, 1 table, 1 bed. A thin film of dust lay over everything. The goblins looked towards the bed, which was unmade, but empty, and breathed a sigh of relief. A plate of food lay on the table with a fork next to it. There was a piece of elderly broccoli speared on the end of the fork. Mould fuzzed most of the other contents on the plate. Algol stepped onto something that groaned, and they all jumped. He leapt back, revealing a square wooden trapdoor set in the floor. "Root cellar, probably," said Nasilka. Her dad had been a mountain goblin, and she had no fear of tunnels and holes, but she found she really, really didn't want to go down there. Algol and Murray, well, they looked ready to bolt. She reminded herself that it was just as alarming for them, and they were from hill and marsh and didn't even have the advantage of having tunnels in their blood, and "You 2 stay up here until I call." The corporals visibly relaxed. She grabbed the handle on the trapdoor, counted to 3, and yanked it up. Dust rattled down from the opening, but that was all. A ladder led down into the earth. Masilka pulled her stub of candle from her kit and lit it. Right, here goes nothing. She didn't know what she was expecting. No, that was a lie. She was expecting to find a couple of dead bodies, possibly something gnawing on them. Please, God, let me be wrong. Please let it be empty. The gods were kind. The root cellar was barely large enough to turn around in, full of shelves that groaned under the weight of canned preserves. The floor was dirt, the walls dirt, and somebody had tossed an old burlap sack on the ground to soak up spills, and that was all. There were no bodies, unless somebody had canned them. I really wish I hadn't thought that. Well, at least we won't starve. Murray! Murray's head appeared in the hole. Yes, Sarge. Have Algol stand guard, not me lug these up. See, there's a blanket we can carry this stuff in. There was a set of rough blankets on the bed, which were a welcome find all on their own. Murray rigged 2 slings with harness leather scavenged from the stable, and they filled them with jars of indeterminate preserves. Most seemed to be peaches, with some dark red things that might have been meat. Tomatoes, plums, oddly coloured peaches thrown in for good measure. Thus loaded, Murray and Nasilka did a quick sweep of the farmhouse. A frying pan and an iron pot were too good to pass up. Nasilka did not want to be making tea in Blanchett's helmet on a regular basis, along with a small sack of salt and a bigger sack of flour. They emerged from the house, heavily laden and clanking as they walked. Despite the mysterious emptiness of the farm, discovering the food couldn't help but raise their spirits. This lasted for a good 5 seconds. Nasilka said, "Where's Algol?" The 2 goblins looked around. He was right out here. "Algol!" hissed Nasilka. She didn't want to yell. She couldn't shake the feeling that yelling would bring something down on them. "Algol, where are you?" The cicadas were the only answer. He can't have gone far. He can't have gone far, muttered Nasilka. Unless whatever got the farmers got him too, Murray replied glumly.
Thank you, Murray.
This is it. Game over, man. Game over. Put a lid on it, Corporal. Murray gave her the look that said, "You know I'm right, but it's okay. I understand you have to say that." She hated that look. She just couldn't do anything about it because, well, he usually was right, hang it all. We can't just leave without him, she said slowly, scanning the fields. But I don't want to stay out here in plain sight either. Far across the fields, she could just make out the town. It wasn't close enough to see any people. They probably couldn't have seen the goblins either, but still, better safe than sorry. Murray dug out his looky tube thing. Nasilka opened her mouth to say that she'd check behind the farmhouse and then stopped. Splitting up did not seem like a good idea. She fiddled with the strap on her sling. "Sarge, did you find him?" "No, but, Sarge, there's no smoke over the town." "That's pretty warm out. Why would there be smoke? Town that size is going to have a blacksmith. Plus there's a windmill over there, which means there's a miller. Where there's millers, there's usually a baker, except there isn't. And even when it's warm, people have to cook, but none of the chimneys are going at all. There's no smoke in the sky anywhere. I don't see any horses or cows in the fields." He raised the tube again and stopped. Nasilka pushed the tube gently back down. "Corporal," she said quietly, "let's not borrow trouble, all right? Let's just find alcohol and get out of here." He wasn't behind the farmhouse. He wasn't in the chicken coop. Nasilka's nerves were fraying badly and there was a cold stone in her gut. Murray kept yanking on his ponytail as if hoping to find alcohol hiding somewhere inside it. "Well," she said finally, "I suppose—" "Sarge!" Murray pointed. She whirled. Across the fields, coming out of a drainage ditch, was a familiar, tall, grey-green figure. Nasilka exhaled. It seemed to come from her toes. She stomped towards him, furious and relieved all at once. "Corporal, what in the name of the great grim gods do you think of—" "Look, Sarge!" he cried, holding something over his head. It was small. It was muddy. It wiggled. It was a kitten. Algol was covered in mud and grinning from ear to ear. "Oh, for God's sake," said Nasilka, covering her eyes. "I heard him mewing." He was stuck down in a pipe in the ditch and I got him out. Can I keep him, Sarge? Can I? Please? Corporal, she began and stopped because she didn't know what she was going to say after that. She should never have let him name the supply goat. Once you start naming goats, it's all downhill from there. She massaged the bridge of her nose and tried again. Corporal, we are goblins, the scourge of the night. Stealers of children, marauders of the dark. The terror of, well, fairly terrible. Anyway, Algol looked at her blankly, petting the kitten. We aren't kitten people. Algol stared at her, still petting the kitten. It made little merp noises and butted its head against his big fingers. But Sarge, he was stuck. We're behind enemy lines. We don't know how we're going to get back. And you want to adopt a kitten? Algol sniffed. The sergeant could see a traitorous moisture beginning under his eyes. We can't leave him, he said quietly. He's the only thing alive out here. He'll die. Corporal. His lower lip wibbled. Oh! Fine, she said, relenting. If somebody eats it, don't come crying at me. Thank you, Sarge. Algol thrust the kitten at her face, and the Silka recoiled. Look, Kitty, this is Sarge. She says I can keep you. Say hi. The stealer of children and marauder of the dark grudgingly reached up and petted the kitten. It licked her fingers with a raspy little tongue. She grumbled. It purred. By rights, I should have you thrown in the stockade, abandoning your post like that. She muttered. We don't really have a stockade, Sarge. Murray pointed out. I ought to make him build one then. Algol, besotted with his new kitten, ignored this. Nazilka threw her hands in the air. Don't do it again, Corporal, or I'll bust you back down to private so fast. I think I'll name him Wiggles. He looks like a Wiggles. Nazilka knew when she was beaten. Wiggles perched on Algol's shoulder and purred the entire way back to camp. The teddy bear, by way of Blanchett, had nothing to report. The twins were asleep in a pile, looking like lumpy green kittens themselves. Luba was exploring the inner reaches of his left ear. All appeared right with the world. The returning goblins slung the preserves off their shoulders and set about making tea in the pot. This time, hold on. The returning goblins slung the preserves off their shoulders and set about making tea in the pot this time. Blanchett was pleased to get his helmet back. Zilka had just taken the first sip, sweet, gritty, fairly revolting, exactly what she'd been looking for when Weasel burst out of the bushes. Sarge! Oh, crud. The little goblin was scarlet-faced, and her hair had come out of its tight tail. Sweat glued it across her cheeks. Her chest heaved. It's... Calm down, kiddo. Zilka knew it was the height of rudeness to finish sentences for somebody with a stutter, but this sounded like an emergency. Something's happened to Thumper. Sit down, take a deep breath. Okay, now tell me what it is. He's hurt. It's elves. She nodded and shook her head, then threw her hands in the air. Nazilka interpreted this correctly as a sign of a tale too complex to be summed up in yes or no questions. All right, guys, let's move. Tell me where you last saw him, kiddo. And tell me on the way. And that's chapter 12.
And we've started a poll in the chat. Who is tonight's MVP?
It's clearly the kitten.
So our options are not displaying. There we go. Frog Snobbler the Troll, Blanchett the Bear, Wiggles the Kitten, or poor Nasilka whose K went missing.
I think Nasilka probably wins hands down.
It's quite likely. Shall we take a little bit of a break and be right back?
Yeah, we're going to step out and...
let the poll finish, and we'll be right back.
And welcome back, everybody. How are we doing? Hope you're all doing okay.
We're going to do a quick check here to see if maybe I'm coming through. I'm a little worried I'm going to be on echo, but we'll give it a try. You folks let me know. We'll just do it. Yeah, it is echo. All right. We tried. I'll work with it some more later. Thanks, folks. It's all right. We'll figure out. I'm sure I've just misflipped a switch somewhere, and we'll figure it out later. Sounds like 4 Alistairs. Oh well.
My God.
Heyo. If you'll excuse me a few moments.
I always struggled a little bit with the 11th Doctor's run, but one of the little interstitial stories they did, where due to a time loop, Amy meets Amy in the TARDIS, and it's very heavily implied they start flirting, does lead to the fantastic moment with the 11th Doctor going, so this is how it all ends, is it? Pond flirting with Pond. And Rory, with a very dreamy look in his eyes, just responds with, I have no problem with anything that's happening right now.
You get to congratulate Frog Snuggler on winning the poll.
Congratulations to Frog Snuggler on winning the poll. We talked to him in the interval, and he said, "Grah."
I want a clip of you going, "Grah, grah, grah."
Grah, 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 grah.
That was very cute.
It's such a smart subversion of expectation that trolls are big and scary and strong and also not clever. But I love that Ursula's versions are marshmallows.
I know. They're very, very sweet. I mean, they eat billy goats, but really, who wouldn't? I mean, they're mean. I've
met goats. A lot of them have it coming, frankly.
So now people know why you picked that T-shirt. Have to have Wiggles.
Gotta have Mr. Wiggles.
Exactly. All right, shall we do shenanigans?
Yes, we have 3 short shenanigans for you this week. The first one is from...
Banana Binary.
Is it?
According to this, it is.
Hold on. Vamp. Alistair Vamp.
Check my notes.
This is in fact from Banana Binary.
Oh, Naomi says that she likes the St. Kilda shirt better. I wonder why.
Strangely.
Yes.
Peter Lucas may have been an evil shit and deeply unlikable in every possible way, but someone looked at me for too long, so I just died instead is the most relatable thing he or anyone ever did.
Fair.
Very much so.
Especially now. It's weird being perceived again.
How so?
Going out in public, having people to interact with.
We might be going to the cinema on Friday. We're fully vaccinated. And...
we'll see.
And it's the first time in 16 months.
Like I said, it's weird.
It's very strange. Nothing can stop you going to see a movie.
I know, very much so.
This next one is from Pinkwitch. Peter, it's a little bit muggy today. Elias, if all our mugs are outside, I am divorcing you right now. Peter takes a sip from a bowl.
All the mugs are totally outside, aren't
they? I'm sure you have some of these kind of things. There are certain types of comedy which just shortcut my brain and which just jump me straight to full-on laughing. And one of them is this kind of, you haven't done this thing at all, have you? No. Visual evidence of thing comes into shot. There's a fantastic set of TikToks. And I swear we're coming back to TikTok. It's been a really busy couple of weeks. We've got some stuff written and everything, which is a guy basically doing if certain dog breeds were humans.
Oh, it's so good.
And the one for Samoyed is 6 a.m. And the scream is cut off halfway through, and that kills me.
Tell him about the golden retriever.
The golden retriever where he just has the camera right in front of him, running around the garden, smiling to the Parks and Rec theme tune, stops, stares really intently at a bush for 10 seconds, and then it all picks up and he runs off again. I will put it in the show notes. Don't worry.
Okay.
And as someone who grew up around border collies, the border collie one for that was just, oh, I think I just broke my ankle. I'll just print it off. Is absolutely legit. Is the golden retriever one just a photo of Mike LeBeau? Let me answer your question with a question. Is the golden retriever one just a photo of Mike LeBeau throwing blue steel?
He's doing that a lot lately, isn't it? He's having a lot of fun with his blue steel photos.
I have got his skincare routine.
We should have Mike come do skincare with you. That would be fun.
My skin is a horror show. Make me lovely.
The Parks and Rec team is in fact what the inside of a golden retriever's head sounds like. And, true fact, the inside of Alistair's head at about 1 a.m. every morning, unfortunately.
Mm-hmm. Without getting into a whole thing.
Oh, yes!
He told me insofar as the tweet was just, it's Nivea all the way, baby.
That's not nearly specific enough.
I know.
We're going to have to... We need demonstrations.
Without getting into without getting into all the specifics of it, I have trouble sleeping at the moment. It's actually a lot better right now than it's been in a very long time.
Thanks, Naomi.
And one of the things I do is kind of lean into it, which is because it takes me a little while longer to wind down than a lot of people. I'll watch a sitcom for an hour, which is how I've gone through Superstore, the vast majority of Parks and Rec,
all of Kim's Convenience,
and a couple of other things in the last 6 months.
Always Sunny in Philadelphia.
Yep.
All those ridiculous 911 emergency shows.
Oh no, those aren't even I can't sleep. Those are just I love this because it's a donut, and those things are a donut. If you're familiar with 911 or 911 Lone Star, then I'm really sorry. And if you're not familiar with them, 911 is actually often annoyingly quite good. It is the crew of a fire, basically the crew of a fire station, and the two paramedics that roll out with them, and Angela Bassett. She has a character.
Up the place entirely on her own.
I mean, she notionally has a character, but it is basically Angela Bassett as an LAPD desk sergeant going, I'm going to help you ass. I'm going to say some words, and this is going to sound like I have done random word selection, and I swear on a stack of holy books of your choice, this is not true. There is an episode of 911 where a lady is fused to her sunbed because she has been hit by a meteorite that has punched through it and her sunbed into the foundation of the building beneath her.
So ridiculous.
There is another one where a hotel collapses on a philandering sex offender and no one else. There is one involving a chicken that has had knives taped to its feet to assist in cockfighting.
The true death of the dinosaurs. Sunbeds.
Sunbeds.
It is an experience, folks.
Now, in comparison to 911 Lone Star, 911 is Bringing Out the Dead by Martin Scorsese. His best and most overlooked movie. Don't at me. 911 Lone Star is supposedly set in Austin, Texas. I am relatively convinced no one on the show has even been to Austin, Texas.
Needless to say, all of the Austin skyline footage appears to be taken by a drone.
Because, well, Austin, one of my oldest, dearest friends lives there, and he perfectly described it as Austin is where Texas puts all the weirdos that they don't want anywhere else. So when a TV show presents Austin as an absolutely kind of buttoned-down, uptight, conservative Texan town, I'm like, have you been there? Ever?
We have, and it's not like that at all.
There's an active volcano under Austin in the show.
Because, Texas is such a volcanic zone.
And there is an episode where a solar flare brings down the ISS, and for some reason, Austin Fire Department are the only people who can help. The show is 1 year old. Wendy, I knew you'd know, because you have incredible taste. Wendy is in the Why? Wendy is in the chat recommending Bringing Out the Dead. I'll give you the really short version of this before we circle back around to
Good
the
luck!
final shenanigans. Bringing Out the Dead is based on a novel by an actual former New York paramedic, and it stars Nicolas Cage as basically Nicolas
And
Cage
John Goodman.
and Ving Rhames and
Ving
Tom
Rhames
Sizemore.
And Tom Sizemore. It's an amazing movie.
And this guy is just... Cage's character just wants to sleep. He just wants to go home. But he's on a 72-hour shift, so he can't. And unfortunately, things are a little bit strung out in the city at that point, so they keep partnering him with somebody else. So the first night, he's partnered with John Goodman's character, who is very sanctimonious and whiny, but is actually just a very decent and upstanding dude. On the second night, he's partnered with Ving Rhames, who is described early on as, we only let Milo work 2 nights a week because he gets overexcited. And then, on the third night, he is partnered with Tom Sizemore. Again. Oh my god, you watched it with Whit and Pete Fenlon. Oh, yes.
Oh, Wendy, you watched it with Whit?
Good grief. On the third night, he walks up to the ambulance, and Tom Sizemore's character is pummeling a crowbar into the headlights, yelling, "Die! Die! Die!" Just on that kind of monotone. Turns around, has that full-on cokehead Tom Sizemore grin, and just goes, "Frank, it's so good to see you. I'm so happy we're rolling in this rig tonight, Frank. She's a warrior, Frank. A warrior. I have tried to kill her many times, and she will not die." And it kind of builds from there. It is by no means whatsoever a cheerful movie. However, and Wendy, given the company that you saw it in, you will know that some of the wiring I share with our mutual friends is the ability to find something very, very dark and grim, very funny. It is genuinely one of my favourite comedies. Also, if you want to be very wacky, double bill it with Synchronic, which is the new Anthony Mackie, Patrick Dornan movie.
You had me at Anthony Mackie.
Pair of New Orleans paramedics deal with a drug that shifts you backwards in time.
What's the new Nicolas Cage one that's not Five Nights at Freddy's Honest?
Oh, Weekend at Willie's.
That we can't get.
Oh no, I can buy that on Blu-ray for £5.
Really?
Yes.
What are you doing Friday?
Probably watching Weekend at Willie's and...
No, let's go to a real cinema.
And eating Wendy's.
This is all going in the show notes, yes? Okay, gosh, I'm going to have to make a heck of a list. Hold on. Shall we do our last shenanigan?
Our last shenanigan is...
Loading, please wait. It is horrible in a thoroughly enjoyable way because it involves Nicolas Cage, and that's his oeuvre.
And that thing that Cage was so good at when in the early 90s, where his face is just like a bag.
That Cage was so good at. Face Off.
There's a sequel to that.
No, I disbelieve.
It's from the same director as Godzilla vs. Kong.
Oh, crap.
Who's also doing the Thundercats movie.
What year is it?
No one knows. Time has no meaning now.
Oh, gosh. I literally just watched Jiu-Jitsu because of TFL. So inexplicable.
Yes. Yes.
Paper hats.
I can fly too.
Exquisite craftsmanship. Anyway.
He was on set the whole time. Cage was on set for the entire shoot, not just the 15 minutes they needed him for.
They couldn't get him to leave, could they?
Chances are no.
Well, I mean, it's what a bunch of stunt people did for a weekend as a tax write-off. I'm convinced.
I am absolutely certain that Frank Grillo was only in that movie because they just ran into him in the gym and like, Frank, yeah?
Get in, losers! We're making a movie!
You busy? Nah.
Oh, gosh.
A He-Man and a Castle Grayskull on Monday. Pezzy, you need to brace for the imminent Kevin Smith scripted Masters of the Universe continuation arriving on Netflix shortly. And I have Color Out of Space to watch. Thank you.
Wait, what? Another one?
Which one?
Color Out of Space.
Yeah.
I thought there was an old one.
Starring Nicolas Cage.
Oh, God! I don't think there's enough alcohol in this house.
Da, 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 da.
Oh, wow.
Yes. I'll find...
Oh, you ever think Cage makes movies because he's lonely?
Yeah, I think he probably does. I also think...
He's an artist in pursuit of truth. I think that's a very generous interpretation.
His work in the last couple of years, and I love seeing this because it's... This happened with a guy whose work is very important to me. Cage's work in the last couple of years appears to be much less, I'm doing this so I don't have to be in my brain, and much more, oh, this is fun. I saw that happen with Henry Rollins. And, I mean, we don't have the couple of hours we need to explain the huge impact that Henry Rollins had on my life as a profoundly depressed teenager struggling through a lot of stuff. But one of the big elements of it, warning, temporary bummer zone, he lost his best friend very young, and so did I. And for years he would talk about Joe in the live shows, and he'd talk about the circumstances of his death. And he would tear the scar open and walk around in it, and then do that thing Henry does where he'd walk out the other side and go on and do something else. And a few years ago I saw him live, and it was amazing because it was like watching an aging punk rock alternative icon airline captain take the stage. He was extremely well dressed and sharp and very much on point. And he talked about a thing which I know was an incident that happened with Joe. Didn't name him. Didn't dwell on it. Just talked about it and moved on. And it was one of the most touching things I've ever seen, because all of a sudden you realize, oh, hey, he's healed. And I love stuff like that. And I love seeing performers get to a point in their career where they go, I could do this for an award, or I could do this because I want to do a movie where I make paper hats and sword fight an alien.
And a piano cave.
And a piano cave. And I'm sure that was in the contract negotiations. Do I get a piano cave? Do you want one, Nicholas? More than anything. You're in. Yay! Anyway, after all that, Our Last Shenanigans is from Words with Kitty Witch, and it is a 2-panel comic. The first of which is John walking up to Martin. John going, Martin, and John and Martin responding, John, don't do this. And brilliantly in the second panel, Martin is shown as substantially larger than everybody's favourite tiny scale model of an archivist, with John hissing, let's gouge out our eyes and make out.
Wow.
Yes.
We need more sword fights with aliens. I mean, true, I guess.
Just maybe not in jiu-jitsu.
Yeah, that movie was a thing.
It was definitely... It finished and you were literally like, well, that happened.
I think I just cross-stitched through that entire movie.
You did.
I think I had the better experience.
Oh, I doubt it.
Okay, why don't you tell folks what's coming up for us?
Exciting news. We're no longer playing the council.
Finally, hooray.
After several months of increasingly ridiculous, demonic alternate history hijinks, Marguerite, you won basically, didn't you? You stopped him from doing things.
Playing the council, yes, exactly. It ended.
It is a piece of culture that is no longer occurring.
I don't know if we won or did well, but we finished, and I'm thankful for that. You know. Oh, Cowboys vs. Aliens was totally a good movie. I'm a sucker for a cowboy movie. That was good. That was totally.
I love that story you told me about Harrison Ford's hat in that movie.
Was it that movie?
Yes.
Is that the one where he's in the gray hat?
And he was really insistent about finding the right hat.
Very insistent about finding the correct... Well, think about it. I mean, he played Indiana Jones, so the hat is like his process, I guess.
Indiana Jones 5, filming shortly.
And it has Phoebe Waller-Bridge in it, doesn't it?
Yes, it does.
She better not be a love interest or I'm going to get way squicked out.
My sincere hope is daughter, honestly.
Okay, should we not talk about how it could be granddaughter at this point?
Conceivably.
Yeah. Anyway.
Anyway.
We're no longer playing the council. We finished the council.
And we've found, on the recommendation of the chat, a 2-player science fiction exploration / combat / stuff game.
Compost Wish. This is like when Nietzsche described Undertale as I am
Experiencing the humor.
Yeah, I feel that way about most British humor. Unfortunately, I am not a Pratchett fan. I can't do the whole British embarrassment humor thing. It just does not work for me.
We have this really sweet-looking 2-player couple run away to an alien planet, investigate weirdness.
To fly around and hold hands, and it looks really cute, and it's 2-player. So we're gonna pick up Haven and start that on Sunday, and I have no idea how long that's gonna last.
Who knows?
I hope our poor PS4 can handle it.
It's fine. It'll be fine. I believe in it.
Be fine. And
Pezzy, have fun stalking Harrison Ford.
Really, might have a stalking the film tomorrow. Have a great time. Take photos.
Yeah. And then we'll be back here next week for 3 more chapters of Three Goblins. 9.
3 more chapters of 3 goblins each is 9 goblins. Oh, yeah, okay. Don't make me do
3
that.
goblins leave Glasgow.
It's late, folks. Don't make me do that.
We come back as 3 goblins. It's just Nasilka going, what? What?
Poor Nasilka. It's called... The game's called Haven, and we'll include it in the show notes for everybody. I think that's everything. Well, okay, here's the thing about Pratchett, right? So, I have relatives who love it, and I have tried it at many different times, at many different points in the chronology over the years, and I don't hate it, but I don't have that visceral connection to it that other people and other relatives have.
You are experiencing the humor.
I am experiencing the humor. Honestly, I feel the same way about most of Gaiman's work. It just bounces off me. Lack of common formative frame, I don't know. And that's fine. Other people can have Pratchett. I'm totally cool with that.
Goblin Squad.
Not everything's about me. It's okay. I think that's everything, isn't it?
I think that is.
That sounds good.
Thank you to our fantastic mods, to the amazing Marguerite, to Ursula for letting us use the book.
Tiny Marguerite in the corner. And hopefully next week I'll get the microphone worked out a little bit better.
And to you for listening. This has been great.
Have a great night.
Thanks so much, folks, and we'll see you on Sunday.
Bye.